What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over some mistakes that could be costing you games in Fortnite Zero Build. I've made videos like this in the past, but my channel has pretty much doubled in size since the last one I've made, and there will be some Season 3 specific mistakes in this video. As always, if you guys do find this video helpful or informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, and comment down below one mistake that you feel like has been costing you games in Season 3. The first one, and I think the biggest mistake that a lot of players make in any Battle Royale, is that they don't get comfortable fighting. A lot of players, when they first install the game or they first get on, they just want to get a win, and that's like the main goal. And that makes sense, but this kind of warps their entire playstyle to be one that is overly passive, because that's like typically seen as the easiest way to win. And not only is this just typically not going to be that fun to play, I feel like it also really hinders you in the long run, because if you don't get confident fighting and you don't get comfortable fighting, it's going to be very hard for you to win games that you shouldn't, or games that are difficult at all. You know, if the only games you're winning are kind of the games that are a pushover, then you're not going to be winning as much as if you get comfortable fighting, you get confident fighting, and you get used to it. It's like if you're learning to swim, pretty much the only thing you could do is like jump in the water and kind of figure it out. And I feel like that's how fighting is. But if you kind of spend your entire play session avoiding fighting and avoiding learning how to fight, it's going to be very hard for you to win a lot of games in the long run. So I think not only will this make the game more fun for you, it will help you win more games in the long run if you do just kind of get confident fighting. This is kind of like the base of the pyramid. If you don't have this, it's going to be hard for you to consistently win. Another mistake, and this is going to be something that I feel like is always the case, but a big deal in Season 3, is going to be 50-50 in close range fights without early damage. With the drum shotty in the game, those fights are very, very random. You know, if you and the opponent are just kind of barrel stuffing each other with drum shotties without any cover, it's not going to be that great. Or if you're just shockwaving onto somebody without any initial tags, I feel like that fight can really go either way. You definitely want to get decent opening AR tags if you can before you push somebody. Obviously, not every situation is going to be ideal, but that should be the goal. But even like now, even if I'm like in a close range fight, if somebody's just pushing me and I don't have early damage on them, I'm usually playing to back up a bit, like not just full run, but reposition and reset the fight. I don't want to just have, you know, a 2 to 3 meter fight with somebody without any cover if I don't already have them incredibly weak. Like the only time I want that situation to happen is when I think the person is like one pumpable, I guess. But that, just avoiding those 50-50 encounters, I feel like completely nullifies the drum shotty. So just try to avoid that as much as possible. Get opening AR tags before you push in on people. And if you are in close range fights before getting early damage on the person, try to play cover as much as you can and really limit how often they're able to shoot at you, because that really limits the potential of the drum shotty. Another big deal for Zero Build and pretty much every BR I've ever played is just to be near cover as much as possible. You want to navigate the map in such a way that if you are shot, there's something close to you that you can use as cover, and you got to kind of immediately get to that piece of cover, like know where it is pretty much at all times. This sounds like it would be incredibly distracting at all times, but once you kind of get in the habit of navigating the map in such a way and being aware of your surroundings and being aware of your nearest piece of cover, not only does it kind of become second nature, but it also becomes second nature for you to immediately like get to that cover. So if you have the option of running down an open field to get to something, or kind of going off to the side a little bit and there's like some rocks or trees for you, you want to go towards those rocks and trees. That way you have something to protect you if a fight does break out. This is also like cars are really great for this, because not only can you get around the map faster and kind of avoid those situations where you're out in the open, but you can also use it as cover if it comes down to it. Another mistake I see a lot of newer players make, and I myself was this way. If I go back and watch some of my clips from like before there was seasons in Fortnite, I was also making this mistake. And that is going to be carrying too many weapons. Utility like the shockwave grenades, porta bunkers, or even the flare gun. I know it's a weapon, but you kind of use it to mark people, you know. Carrying these items makes a lot of fights much easier. It makes hard situations easier. Like the situation we just talked about before. If you have no cover and you get shot, you're probably going to lose that fight and just be out of the game. But if you have shockwaves, you can reset that engagement. If you have porta bunkers, you can build some cover. And these types of things can save your life and make the bad situations, or the like certain death situations, a situation where you can actually get out of. But a lot of players, when they're newer to the game, they want to carry like 4 weapons, like an AR, shotgun, an SMG, a sniper, or a launcher, and then they only have 1 slot, which is probably going to be for heals. But I've even seen people just not carry heals at all. But typically what you've seen for a lot of players is 2 to 3 weapons is like ideal. Then you have room for double heal maybe, or heal utility. but 2 to 3 weapons I feel like is kind of the sweet spot of where you want to be. 4 I think is really pushing it unless you just haven't had a chance to get anything else for whatever reason like that in the game. So if you are someone who finds yourself always carrying too many weapons, like maybe that's fun to do. But if you want to like consistently win and play better, then I definitely think kind of 3 weapons is the highest you want to go. Another mistake that a lot of people make, that's another common thing in a lot of BRs, is they don't reposition after a fight. Even if you aren't actively getting third-partied, odds are someone may be on their way to third-party you if you were just shooting off and just fighting. They just might not be there yet. So unless you're already in a great spot, like if you're on top of a castle or on top of a house or something that's like fortified, then sure, you can maybe chill there and look for third parties. But if you're in a more neutral area, like just an open field or somewhere that's not that great, you want to reposition after a fight. And this is, like I said, this is a big thing in other BRs. If you've played games like Warzone or Apex, I'm sure this is a big thing in Warzone because I played that game as well. I think the biggest thing that kind of makes a lot of Fortnite players struggle is after they finish a fight, it takes them way too long to loot. And I feel like the thing that just will help this for you is if you kind of already know the items that you like carrying and like how you rank them in your own head and like what could improve your loadout. But if you're in a situation where you have like a green MK and then you eliminate someone who had a gold Havoc AR, and then in the moment you have to stop and think about like if you want to carry the green MK or the gold Havoc AR, I feel like that is just going to like set you up for failure. You just want to kind of immediately know these things. If you're new to the game or new to the season, then sure, maybe you kind of have to like think about it more. But once you've been playing for a while, I feel like you should kind of already have somewhat of a tier list in your head of like what items you enjoy carrying and what items you swap for. So if you are someone who, you know, after you get in a fight, you don't really know what to do, I feel like you typically want to reposition and don't spend that much time looting. This is the thing where when I make those spectating videos, it like really stresses me out when people just kind of spend a lot of time looting and looking at the ground after a fight and not as much like repositioning and like getting ready to defend against potential third parties. Another mistake I see a lot of newer players making is that when they're in a fight, they just kind of stand still and they don't really strafe, they don't really crouch, they don't really jump, they don't use cover that well. And this kind of goes back to the first point of just getting comfortable fighting makes your life a lot easier. But I've fought some of the best streamers in Zero Build. Like I have this clip here of me eliminating Tfue and Zemi in the same solo pub from Chapter 3. And I feel like the thing that separates a lot of good players from like great players is not as much the aim. Like the aiming mechanics and the weapons in Fortnite are incredibly simple, but what you can kind of just look at somebody and tell when they're good is how they move their character during fights and how they use cover in fights. Like the weaker players tend to just stand there. The very good players are not only very hard to hit, but they're also using cover effectively as often as possible. And I feel like a lot of people only think of cover in terms of long range fights, but even in close range fights, if you're able to play a rock or a tree or like a pillar of something and effectively right shoulder peek off of that or effectively crouch or jump peek off of that and limit your character's exposure to the opponent, it's going to be very hard for them to win the fight. The reason why right shoulder peeks are so important in Fortnite is because the camera is messed up and you can peek from the right while showing less of your character than if you peek to the left. And this is another thing that when you are newer to the game and you really focus on this, it might be difficult. But once you get used to playing these right shoulder peeks and playing around cover as much as possible, it just becomes second nature and you kind of just do it automatically. This is something that if you've played build mode, it's just very important all the time. I think any build player can come into Zero Build and just kind of automatically understand this and be good at it, because that's a lot of what build fighting and box fighting is just playing around right shouldered peek and like peeking properly as much as possible. So use cover in fights, strafe in fights, jump in fights, just be annoying to fight. Anytime you fight somebody and you're like, wow, that person was annoying, it was so hard to hit them, try to emulate that as much as you can and work some of those things into your gameplay. Another thing that I see when I make my spectating videos that makes me very uncomfortable is when people are incredibly indecisive and then they just end up doing nothing. Even if you're making a bad play, I feel like a bad play that you commit to is more likely to work out than a good play that takes you way too long to arrive to. You know, we've seen so many times in those videos where someone kind of half commits to something and then backs up and doesn't do it, and then they end up doing it anyways, and it would have just probably been better to do it from the get-go. And this is another thing that kind of comes back to that first point, I think, of just being comfortable fighting. If you're comfortable fighting and you're confident fighting, I feel like you're less likely to be indecisive and less likely to overthink things. I've seen a lot of players in the Zero Build community that just kind of overthink everything to the max, but Fortnite is pretty simple when it comes down to it as far as shooters go. The main kind of skill gap in this game, I think, is just like the mechanics around fighting. But just whatever you're going to do it. Be confident. If you lose, you lose. It is what it is. It's not that deep most of the time. I feel like if you do catch somebody off that doesn't know you're there, you want to take your time and get good opening tags. So if you see somebody and it's pretty obvious they don't see you, then shooting when you have like a 2 out of 10 shot isn't ideal. But if you can wait a little bit and then get like an 8 out of 10 engage on them, that's going to be much better. And in team game modes, this is huge. So if you and your team happen upon an unsuspecting team and you're able to focus down on one player in specific and just guarantee y'all get a knock, it's going to be much easier. You'll see this often in team game modes where teams will like kind of indicate a player they're going to shoot and then like kind of 3, 2, 1, like count down, and then they all shoot at the same time. And it's usually a free tag. And this is, I feel like, also just comes down to being comfortable fighting. If you don't panic in these situations and you're not nervous, then you won't just accidentally shoot the moment you see somebody and give your location away. For some minor mistakes I felt like I was making earlier on this season is early on I was not utilizing these jungle vault rifts. There's these little doors that you can open. There's a statue. There's 2 statues and a door, and one statue opens the one statue opens the door, and one statue generates a rift. These rifts are permanent. You can do them, or infinite, I guess. You can do them as much as possible. And if you learn where these statues are, I'll have a map of it on screen now, but you can go to fortnite.gg and see these statue spawns. Once you learn where some of these are and you kind of memorize it, you can just often navigate to this rift and then kind of bypass walking around on the map as much as possible. This has made the game much easier for me once I've started using some of these jungle rifts as much as I can. Another mistake I see some people making is not recycling flare guns. So even if you don't want to carry the flare gun, it is very helpful if you eliminate somebody and there's a flare gun on their body and you're safe, you can shoot this off a few times and mark the area around you. Or if you come into a POI, you see one on the ground, you can shoot it off a few times and see if there's anybody hiding in that POI. When you get the augment, you can hold this in your augment slot and then just pull it whenever you want, shoot the flare gun, and then drop it for whatever you want to carry. There's a lot of ways to use the flare gun without actually dedicating an inventory slot to it, which is really nice. One big mistake I feel like I was making early on in the season is that I was going to Island too much. Last season, I thought Island was very good because the pulse rifle was insane. And once you controlled Island with the red eye, you could just be tagging everybody across the map. If you were camped up on the island and you saw somebody down on the ground, they were a pretty easy kill a lot of times. But this season, one, the MK isn't as insane as the red eye at long range. So if you just see somebody across the map, I don't feel as confident just getting an easy kill off them. 2, I don't think the mythic drum gun is as insane, or the drum shotgun is as insane as the pulse rifle was. And I feel like just the shotgun meta this season doesn't favor fighting Island as much. Like, if you're on roof fighting somebody and they have a drum shotty, even if you eliminate them, odds are you're probably going to take some damage. Like I was saying before about not 50-50ing those close range fights because of the drum shotgun. That's pretty much all the Island is. And if someone riffs, lands on you, you kill them, and then another person riffs, lands on you, you're probably just dead there. It's very easy for people to do a decent amount of damage to you with the drum shotgun. So I just feel like it's not worth fighting Island this season. Also, if you're capturing the flag, it's more inconvenient to get to the top of the house with shockwaves than it was the katana. So I just don't fight Island at all anymore, and I feel like my win rate has gone up a lot more after just not fighting the Island. And I very rarely, if ever, lose to the mythic drum shotgun. Like, I don't recall a time I've lost to it this season. It probably has happened, but just in general, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And it's not as game-changing as the pulse, and I feel like controlling Island itself isn't as big of a deal as it was last season. The slurps are still nice, but I'm typically able to get those from the vault or the combat cache, which I have been going to a lot more this season. And I highly would recommend getting your combat cache if you've been ignoring it, because if you're able to get it while it's gold or purple, that's a guaranteed gold or purple pump, along with slurps, along with another weapon as well. But it's guaranteed pump shotguns out of there. So if you like using the pump, I would definitely recommend going for the combat cache and trying to get there as fast as possible. Utilizing those jungle rifts for it can often get you there when it's gold rarity, if you're just kind of waiting at the jungle rift when the combat cache spawns. And then the final thing is just going to be not playing creative. I've seen a lot of especially newer Fortnite players that are just very averse to playing creative. I'll have a video linked down in the description down below of some creative maps I recommend, but creative is just the most time efficient way to like practice and improve in this game, as well as just familiarize yourself with like new items or any sort of settings changes. I recently read a comment on one of my videos about the shockwaves where this player was talking about how they were having a hard time using the shockwaves and how it's frustrating because they just can't really get a good handle on it, but they didn't want to use creative for whatever reason. And it's just like, for the time it took them to type that comment, they could have just already loaded into a creative map and been familiarizing themselves with it. Like, it's very easy. I'm not sure why a lot of players have such an aversion to it, but even just like 5 to 10 minutes a day before like you actually start your matches, not only are you going to be improving much faster because you can get in fights much faster, but also you're going to be like more warmed up when you do go into an actual game. And I feel like that's going to result in you getting more out of those matches anyways, because like warming up in a BR just isn't as ideal because of how long it can take to get into an engagement. You know, a lot of players might play an entire 20-minute match and maybe get like 7 or 8 kills. And that's like a kill every 3 minutes or so on average. Like it's not that much action, whereas creative you can get in like 20 engagements in 3 minutes. So I would just highly recommend playing creative, trying it out if you are someone who hasn't already. Not only can it be like a fun ulterior mode, it's good for XP, and also I think it's like one of the fastest ways to improve in the game. I played this game since it came out, and obviously my skill had kind of plateaued and stagnated after a while. And I didn't really see much improvement in my gameplay until I started playing creative. It came out in like season 7. I probably didn't start using it regularly until late chapter 1, early chapter 2. And that was the point where I started to see my skill improve again. So if you are one of those people, I would definitely recommend trying it out. And that is going to be it for this video. Like I said, there will be a video linked down in the description below of creative maps I recommend. As always, remember to give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you like some more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.